Welcome back to the AI4India podcast. We've been gone for a while. We've had a little hiatus. We've had a chance to reflect and come back with even stronger and more exciting conversations. And in that spirit, we have two very exciting guests to discuss the recent report that they did with us. First is a returning guest, Krishnan Narayanan. Some of you might know him from previous episodes. He is a researcher with the Center for Responsible AI, IIT Madras. There, he is a co-member of the IIT Madras Center of Excellence on AI in Education and has contributed to the review and creation of AI literacy curriculum under Project AI Samarth. Now, in collaboration with Professor Ravindran, Krishnan has also written a number of op-eds on AI, which have been featured in leading publications such as the Indian Express, the Times of India, and the Hindu. He's also the co-founder and president of Itihasa Research and Digital. And quite excitingly, he's also an award-winning co-author of numerous books, such as Against All Odds, the IT Story of India, Empowering India, Ideas for Action by Scientists and Engineers, and most recently, the Co-Intelligence Revolution, How Humans and AI Co-Create New Value. We've had a previous conversation on this book as well, which you can find on the YouTube playlist or Spotify playlist, wherever you're watching it. And he is joined today by a debutant for the AI4India podcast, Omir. Omir is a public interest technology researcher working at the intersection of AI, policy, and India's digital economy. He's currently a policy analyst at the Center for Responsible AI, IIT Madras, where his work focuses on AI governance, AI safety, and the future of work. Previously, he worked at PRS Legislative Research, supporting members of parliament and state legislators. And before that, he's also worked with Zomato's policy team, getting an inside view of how digital platforms operate. So I think that's a perfect segue, and I think Omer's experience definitely will help this conversation today. Actually, before we get into that, let me welcome you both to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out. It's great to have you back, Krishnan, and it's great to have you on, Omer, as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much for
Thank
having me.
you. Thanks, Karam. Good to be back here.
What? Yeah, excited to have you guys. And today we're discussing something a bit different. I think this is a bit more exciting for me personally. I really enjoyed reading the report as well. It's the Algorithmic Human Manager, sorry, AI apps and workers in the Indian gig economy. And you can see the cover right there. And you can also access the report. We'll be sharing the link. You will be able to see it in all the links to the episode. Quite the read, honestly, and I really enjoyed it. And I think it's something that's very important to discuss because I think we on this podcast and on a lot of conversations on AI, we always focus on, this technology is coming and it's doing great things. We also have to talk about, as it creates opportunities, there are also things, limitations that come in, challenges that come in. I think this report covers that, the human side of the story very well in terms of the challenges. So I think the gig economy is growing massively and the use of AI in it is growing massively. I think Niti Aayog projects that the blue work gig economy is going to be employing about 2.35 crore people by 2029 or 2030. So it's a huge market. And, I think what you guys have written about here has huge implications for it. So just to start us off, Omer, I mean, if you'd like, could you tell us a bit about, the report in your own words? And what kind of motivated you guys to undertake a study on AI and the gig economy? What was that motivating factor? Was it your previous experience in working for platforms, or what was that push for it?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, as you rightly said, right, in terms of the motivation, right, two, three things. One, of course, by virtue of some of my past experiences, I've been always curious about this sector. Second, even from an Indian perspective, right, this is a hugely important sector that is seeing an immense amount of growth, and there's a lot of potential also, which is creating livelihood opportunities. And third is like the most important reason is that while there's a lot of work happening around the gig economy and what kind of value it is adding for workers and its contribution to the Indian economy, not a lot of attention has been paid as to what has enabled the growth of this entire sector, right? And if you think about it, I mean, today you're just sitting at your home, you can download an application, go through some verification and start earning, right? So what is that technology that is powering the entire ecosystem, right? So we were really curious about that. And also given the increasing use of AI and the advancements made in that field, we were also thinking that how are these companies leveraging AI as a technology? So that's why if you look at the title also, right? I mean, we've not only looked at AI, we've also looked at digital technologies because it is a set of different technologies coming together that is powering this entire ecosystem. So that was one part. The second part is also that while so much of technology is being used and also creating so much of these opportunities, what is the impact of all of this on workers, right? I mean, what do they think and what is their perception? Because of course, you and I can have these conversations and our perceptions are very different as opposed to how they think because they are the ones interacting with this technology on a day-to-day basis. And so worker perspective was one thing that we actually wanted to bring forward. And the other thing was also not to chat with companies and other experts as thinking that what is their plan of using the technology, how are they thinking about the technology, and what has been their experience so far. And of course, what's the future look like, right? In terms of these companies also, how are they thinking about AI as a technology being integrated into the gig economy? So I would say broadly, that's what the thought process. Krishnan, if you would like to add something
Sure,
to it.
sure, sure. No, I just want to add a couple of points. One, following the book, we actually set up with the support of Professor Ravindran at the at IIT Madras, the head of the Vadvani School of Data Science and AI and the Center for Responsible AI. We have set up something called the Co-Intelligence Network. So under the Co-Intelligence Network, incidentally, one of the futures that we want to study is the future of work. So anyway, we were training our minds there. But as we did the sort of a landscape study of the kinds of work that are happening on future of work, we discovered that the study of the gig work is actually a little under researched, and so we thought it'll be something that'll be useful. It's to add to the body of work in this space. So that's how we ended up with this topic.
Wonderful. And I think, once you guys kind of identified this topic, I was very interested in, how you guys kind of went about the research around it, because you mentioned a few times in the report that, you guys looked at it from the lens of social justice. So could you elaborate a bit on your methodology for the audience? Like, how did you guys go about the study? I saw a lot of primary research as well. So can you speak a bit about that?
Yeah, so it was a mixed methodology. So we, as you said, right, one of the key important things that we had in mind was that we want to capture the perspective of workers, right? So we actually went on ground and spoke with these gig workers working for different platform companies, right? Some workers in Bangalore and some workers in Delhi NCR. Try to spend some time with them and observe their work and also ask a few questions. The second part of we also spoke to companies and we also spoke to other experts working in this ecosystem, including civil society people, also some worker unions, and some independent academics also. And the other part was also doing some secondary research as to looking at what other body of work has happened. Of course, Niti Aayog has done a lot of work and other organizations have also done that. So that was broadly, we think the social justice angle is, of course, right? So when you're thinking about workers or generally as Krishnan mentioned, right, future of work. So one of the key question is that what kind of impact will it have on worker rights, right? So that is the social justice angle that we were trying to look at it from that, because you, at the end of the day, while technology does create a lot of benefits, you also need to sort of understand that theoretically from the conception of worker rights, labor rights, right? Does it impact them? And if yes, in what ways, right? And if it does, and there are some issues, what kind of solutions can you provide? And can technology also be used to mitigate or solve those issues? So that was broadly the approach that we undertook.
Got it. I think that makes a lot of sense. So please,
Right.
Krishnan, so please go on.
If I can just add one this thing, of course, like we said, this was a process which was mixed method. I'm also glad that Omir more so than me. I mean, I also spent some time with the work, but Omir, in fact, ended up he shadowed these workers, on their beat. In fact, I think there was one of the times there was some strike or something that was about to happen when it was like real field work. On the social justice angle, we were also guided in this project by Professor Sudarshan from the Humanities and Social Sciences Department at IIT Madras. And so we did look at certain philosophical frameworks, if you will, right? The Rawls's difference principles and Amartya Sen's capability theory and so on. So some of those factors where we sort of kept in mind as we drew upon that social justice lens to look at the findings from this survey.
Just one thing, since now Krishna has mentioned the fieldwork aspect, right? As a researcher, one of the challenges that we face, and this is, I think this is a design problem in the gig work ecosystem as a whole, because these workers are always on the move, right? So it is very difficult to like get a hold of them. I mean, you won't meet a worker and they won't sit with you for 30 minutes and chat with you, right? Because they have to do the next gig, right? They're on their work. So that was also a challenge and some way interesting also, right? To observe them to their day of work. So yeah, I think that's something what I wanted to mention, right? Because initially you would think, like you just go chat with them and you'll get to know the experiences, but it's actually not that easy, right? So when you go to them, they don't have the time to like actually sit down and talk to you. So as a research, that was quite interesting to me.
That's definitely fascinating. I think you both make very interesting points. Just to your point, Omer, I mean, I just want to ask. So you mentioned that these people were on the go. So and I think in the methodology in the document, you guys also mentioned that a lot of these interviews are virtual. So did you guys have to like split them across like multiple conversations to kind of work around their schedules, or how did that work?
Yeah. So again, there was no structure that even if I had a structure, the moment I went and with that structure was gone, right? So different ways, right? So one, of course, when you go to these, there are of course hotspots in the city where you find a lot of these workers. That is one way where you can talk to them if they have some free time. And then I'm like, can I take a number? And then probably we can chat on call. So then you call them, but whenever you call them, they're probably on the go, doing some order, doing some gig. So I'm like, okay, I'll call you after this time. Then turns out that they're not that available. So I would say it's not that I'm getting a dedicated time slot with them. It is spread across. So that's it. The second thing is that when you approach these workers, yeah, sorry, there was some disturbance. When you approach these workers, they are often standing in groups, right? Because they also have their social groups, they have small groups. So when you go talk to at least one or two, you'll see slowly some other workers will also see, okay, what's happening? They'll come. And then suddenly it'll become like a group thing. You're talking to multiple people and you're getting to know their experience. Someone will say something, someone. So I would say that's it. It's not, there is not a very coherent structure, because that's just like, you can't really do that. It's the design of the work such that doesn't allow you to do that. So I would say virtual calls, meeting in groups, then finding the right time to meet them in person.
But of course, we also spoke to a number of business executives and researchers and so on, which was the more traditional way. You set up time and it's like a scheduled call, like we're having this call and stuff. Yeah.
Got it. I mean, that's fascinating. It sounds like quite the research experience. Krishnan sir, I mean, you also mentioned something that I found interesting. You said that you guys took a lot of inspiration from studies that have been done in the humanities and sociology. This is not specific to your report, but in general, do you feel like more AI research now needs to kind of take into account a lot of sociological methodologies and theories? Do you think that perhaps something that's needed today in AI research?
Absolutely. I mean, and once again, we are dipping into lots of sociological, the toolbox, if you will, and figuring out methodologies. So for instance, on December 4th, I'm hosting an event on the future of learning in a co-intelligence world. Okay, so there we have about 40, 50 participants, but the methodology I'm using there is called the ethnographic experiential futures methodology. Okay, so straight from social sciences and how we visualize the future. Yeah, and even the analysis tools, right? I mean, you take a look at, there was another study that we did from CeRAI on the adoption of Gen AI in higher educational institutions. And so we leveraged a methodology that comes from the information sciences world. It's called UTAUT, UTAUT. So I think this interdisciplinarity is required to understand, because eventually we're dealing with human agency. How do we understand that and so on? So yes, so definitely the HSS tool sets have become very important.
Wonderful. Coming back to this report, I mean, there are a few terms that you guys mentioned. I'm not sure if you coined them or if these are terms that are out there already, but you mentioned the term Algorithmic Human Manager. Can you guys elaborate a bit about that? And then perhaps, maybe you can mention some of the key findings that you had during this research.
I actually would want Krishna to take the algorithmic manager one. Yeah, I think we should hear it from him, and then probably I can come to the findings.
So that was a phrase. I think the algorithmic boss is a phrase that we have seen elsewhere. Yeah, but in the Indian context, we thought there were a couple of points which came out which were very important, and so we. Instead of just focusing on the algorithmic boss, we had to bring the human angle. And so we said, I think that's why we used this phrase, the algorithmic human manager. So there were two interesting thoughts here. The first one is that, you see, at the end of the day, algorithms, etc., help in optimization, work allocate, better work allocation, efficiencies, all of that. But it should not be at the cost of the human touch. And so repeatedly in our study, this thing about keeping the human in the loop. Hey, I'm getting deactivated because of some algorithm, but I need to speak to a human to redress this. So that repeatedly that thing about having that human in the loop and that human aspect came out very strongly. So which is why the human manager. But the second, and this was a very interesting take, that there is a lot of awareness because people do use the platform and they have the app in front of them. So of course, every worker knows that something, so they can't make out what is digital and what is AI. They just say, yes, kuch ho raha hai. But here was the interesting thing. Many of them actually thought these decisions were finally being taken by a human. It's although it was mediated by the platform. So they were very clear that it's the operations manager finally will decide whether I get the extra order or not. So in a way, it was like maybe their understanding of how the system works. So that also ensured that we had the human manager along with the algorithm. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Now, in terms of the finding, right? Of course, Krishna has mentioned some of these things, right? So, of course, this perception, right, that workers have. I think this is exactly the reason why we wanted to speak to them, because you would never get these insights if you don't speak to them, right? So, a couple of things. One, of course, from a worker's perspective, they do realize the kind of value that gig work adds, right? I mean, it is a tool that they use for sustaining their livelihoods. But for some, it may not be the first choice, right? I mean, when a worker thinks about getting to the workforce, some may not want gig work as their first priority, but then also they can rely on it, right? So we spoke to someone, and the worker was like, I was not able to find a job in the market, right? So in these instances, gig work often helps them to support them financially, to support their livelihoods. That's one. Second, for them, grievance redressal is one of the most important things, right, when it comes to the entire platform. Because I remember one worker said that the moment you're on your bike, nobody is with you. It's only you and your mobile phone. And in the mobile phone, it's only the grievance redressal to which you can talk to someone, right? So for them, in terms of technology, they think about grievance redressal. And whenever you ask them what suggestions you might have so we can improve the platform, they will always say, I should be able to talk to a person, right? I don't want to talk to a machine. I just want to call someone, and there should be a person on the other side. That's fair. And the second most important thing for them when it comes to the platform or the application is the incentive. I mean, like wages, the money that they are earning on the platform, right? So that is a huge, I would say, an important aspect that some of them have issues that I don't know how my wage is being calculated, or sometimes I'm not happy. Some workers are really happy that they're earning well. So that becomes really important for them. And also incentives, right? Because the nature of gig work is such that you have some daily incentives, and also some workers have raised issues like, I don't know how my incentives are being calculated. Maybe they can be more transparent. So these were some of the findings from the workers' perspective. When we spoke to companies and other stakeholders, right? So one clear highlight was that technology, including AI, is solving a lot of problems that you previously existed in this entire ecosystem for things like onboarding or recruiting, right? Especially in the blue collar gig work, it's very difficult because it's not like I'm going on a platform applying for a job. There's a CV, right? It's very difficult to find the right set of people. So because most of the onboarding in most of the platforms, everything is being done digitally, right? You download an application, all the verification is being done. So in a world where you didn't have technology, and this one of the stakeholders pointed out, as a worker, you would have to physically go to an office, right? Talk to them, spend time, and that is time lost for you because you're not able to work, right? As of today, you can still be working for a platform or may have a conventional job, but you can still join a gig work platform without having to take a leave from your work or from any other platform, right? So that's one of the things they mentioned. And the other thing is that, of course, technology is behind all the operations, right? So in that way, I mean, if you think about it, so beautiful, right? I mean, technology is powering the entire ecosystem, be that you getting your wages, you getting your onboarding. For companies, definitely they're really optimistic about the use of technology, including AI. And lastly, I would say in warehouses. Again, this is one topic that hasn't been explored in the Indian context because within the platform economy, the quick commerce aspect is really booming, right? You have your stores from where you're getting the groceries and other stuff. So what is happening in these dark stores, you're seeing a lot of humans and technology working together, right? From picking up goods or sorting. So for instance, in quick commerce, if you think about it, how you're able to get something in like 10 minutes, right? What is so unique about the whole process? So these workers have these handheld devices, right? That help them navigate through the entire store and help them pick the right thing. So this is one aspect where you see technology also working and humans also, and they're trained on these devices. And interestingly, I would say, so I was speaking to a worker in a warehouse, right? And I said that, why do you need even people? Why can't like robots do this? So a couple of things he said, though, it's quite interesting thing. I remember I was laughing when I shared with Krishnan. One, he said that machine ज़्यादा काम नहीं कर सकती. Like a machine will do whatever, how is it programmed? A worker can, if there's more load in the store, they can like like they can increase the pace of work. I can't tell this thing to a machine. They won't listen to me. And secondly, he said that if a machine breaks down, it'll take time to fix it. So then my operation will shut. So I need people also. I mean, right? So yeah, I would say these are some of the insights that while we're going to these stores, we're speaking to the workers there. We got.
I find one thing very interesting, in the AI space, and when I speak to people, I feel like, your white collar professionals are a bit more fearful of AI replacing them than the blue collar workers. You see a lot of companies, tech companies, for example, laying off people in their teams to replace them with AI. But whenever I talk to blue collar workers, they always feel like, AI can't do what they do. So as an example, I was traveling in Europe earlier this year, and in some hotels in Europe, they started this self check-in, like these counters where you kind of put in your details and you put your passport in, it does everything, and it gives you your room key. And I was speaking to one of the people in one of these hotels, and I was asking them, I was like, "Aren't you concerned about this?" And he said, "Look, if they'll always need someone here to make sure it doesn't go wrong. So it just makes my work easier. Like, they're never gonna get rid of people completely. Like, there's always gonna be someone who has to solve a problem. So I think in that way, there's not as much fear
Yeah.
of AI in that sense."
Yeah. That is a very interesting question, right? Because not just limited to our report, but it's a very important question for all countries, including India, right? That what does the future of work look like, right? I mean, how will it impact workforce? So in gig work, when you actually spoke to workers, understanding their perception of AI technology replacing their work, I don't think anyone, I mean, the kind of things they said were like, there are potholes on the road. A robot won't be able to navigate, or a robot won't be able to climb stairs and, do this, or if there was a drone, it'll get stuck in the electric wires, right? So they're like, no, I mean, it can't replace our work, right? And I think we got a similar sentiment from companies as well, right? Because gig work, I would say, is so dynamic in terms of its nature, right? There are so many last minute decisions that you have to make. Let's say there is a designated route that you have to take to deliver an order, but there is some blockage or something like that, right? So till from the perspective of companies, workers are able to navigate that. Maybe machines or technologies, at least at this stage, cannot do that.
But I think we should also keep in mind one thing, Karam, that I don't think workers fully understand AI yet. They have an understanding, but for them, it's because it's the platform. They don't fully understand the nuance of AI. So we should keep that in mind as as they give responses to these things. Many times they are experiencing the effect of AI, but when you ask them, they would say we have never used AI because they don't know. And so yeah, it has to be taken with a pinch of salt what they say, and yeah, it remains to be seen how this technology will evolve and impact. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think it's so important to have studies such as yours, that bring out that human side so that, both policymakers and business leaders can make informed decisions on these things. And just in line with the part of policymakers, I saw one recommendation in the report, which was about a new DPI that could be useful for this. Could you guys elaborate a bit about that and explain it to us?
Yeah. So while we were speaking to policy professionals and generally other experts, right, we realized that currently there are a lot of policy conversations, some policy decisions also to provide social security benefits and other kind of benefits to these workers, right? And within that, social security has like been a key priority for policymakers. And and basically the thing is that currently the one of the challenges when it comes to identification of workers or transferring them any social security benefit is how do you do that, right? What are the mechanics of it? I mean, does a company do that? Does the government do the company do it? So there are several, and there are several problems that come up, right? I mean, let's say if some states want to give benefits to their workers, do they create a new system from scratch? Do different states create these different systems? Will companies transfer the benefits to each state? So how does that work, right? I mean, and if you think about it from a compliance perspective, also this is really not the most may not be the most efficient when it comes to actually implementing this. And second, today, although there is the code of social security that defines a gig worker that has a legal definition. But let's say I'm a worker and I get to a next platform, I work on it for like 2, 3 years. My identity as a gig worker is still being defined by that platform, right? So, and one platform company might define it differently in terms of what are the kind of details it is taking from me, etc. Because the nature of work is different. Somewhere you're driving a car, sometimes you're doing different tasks. When the moment I shift to another platform, I start from scratch, right? I log in again, I create my rating again, etc., etc. So basically, we saw that the whole ecosystem, while the intent is there to provide these benefits to workers, the system is fragmented in some way or the other, right? To which you're not able to actually implement most of these policies that have come up. So we have come up with a thing called the UWI, the Unified Worker Interface, which is like a DPI that we're trying to imagine, right? Similar to like protocol-based approach. That tomorrow, can you imagine a world where as a gig worker, you have a unique ID and that has the record of all of your past work history so that whenever you're shifting platforms, you're not starting from scratch. You can see your record history. And also from a government perspective, there is a unique ID through which I can directly send you any benefit. I know your identity. It's not dependent on any platform. So even if you leave the platform, the ID still exists. The third thing is, which is the most important thing, if there has to be any data sharing between companies and governments, if has to be transfer of any social security benefits, all these platforms can be compliant with the protocol, right? They don't need to create a separate database. Of course, when you create these databases, there are issues around privacy, right? There are issues around security of the data. So most of these concerns are also addressed when you have, and we've seen, right? I mean, you've seen the UPI and the India DPI journey that how to worked out pretty well, right? So that's the kind of solution of the world we imagine for gig work, because this economy will grow as we speak, right? And at the same time, you need to consider these social security aspects. So we need to transfer the benefits, and governments and want to do that, right? So this is the kind of solution that you come up. Krishnan, want to add something to it?
No, I think you've covered the UWI quite well. This is of course a protocol story. So the idea is not for each government to create its own databases, right? And as long as every player in the ecosystem conforms to a protocol, that discoverability of the worker across platforms, etc., becomes easier. Yeah. Similarly, the reputation scores. So I have 1,000 rides on Uber, and I now decide to go to Ola. I should be able to carry my reputation score along to new platforms. And so something like UWI could potentially offer that capability. Yeah.
And also is to add, right, not just gig work. This is a solution that can work for the entire informal workforce, right? Because one of the biggest challenges today in the informal workforce is how do you define them, right? Because in formal employment, there are these structures that exist, right? So not only for gig workforce, for the entire informal workforce, if you can have these unique IDs and they're on this protocol, it can solve a lot of other problems that come with informal employment, especially transfer of social security benefits.
I think it's a fascinating concept, and it was pretty interesting to read it. It's even more interesting to hear from you guys. I hope if any policymakers are watching this, they take note of it, and hopefully it's something that becomes a reality eventually. Just wrapping up on the report side, I wanted to ask a question that I wasn't able to ask Krishnan sir last time, which was a miss on my part. I was hoping you guys could talk a bit more about, what the Center for Responsible AI at IIT Madras actually does. What is the kind of work it undertakes? Why was it formed? Just for our audience's knowledge.
Omir, please.
Sure. So, I would say the background is that over the past few years, we've seen that AI is becoming an increasingly important aspect of our lives, right? It's being used in important sectors like healthcare, education, and a new agriculture, urban, smart cities, etc. Right? So a number of sectors and law and order, surveillance, etc. So the idea was that while the technology has great potential in terms of the kind of benefits it can provide and the kind of opportunities that it can unlock, there are also some concerns that come with it, right? In terms of things like bias, discriminatory, not being robust enough, transparency, etc. So that was a broad philosophy that while you develop and deploy these technologies, you need to ensure that they're safe and responsible, right? And any kind of harm that it may have on individuals and society as a whole, you can avoid them or mitigate them, study them better, right? So that's why the center came up. The center is under the Vanish School of Data Science and AI at IIT Madras. And the idea was to create a multidisciplinary research center where you bring people in from different backgrounds in terms of their work. And we come together and study this technology. So, of course, we have technologists, but we also have policy people, and we also have people from other social sciences background, not only studying the technology, but also trying to study the implications of it. One of which, of course, that we're studying gig work is one aspect that you've discussed, right? So that's the idea. And yeah, of course. And the other thing is, of course, the center also closely works with different organizations, and we're very open to collaboration with other entities. And given India has a national AI mission, we're closely working with them also on the safety pillar, on trying to ensure that whatever policies India passes, the safety aspect of AI is definitely taken into account. And lastly, I would say that this also links back to what we were just discussing, right? The importance of multidisciplinary work, right? I mean, when you bring in people, so I mean, and like a lot of people say that they want to do multidisciplinary work, and it's great, right? But actually, when you bring people from different backgrounds in the same room, it's really challenging, right? Because people speak very different languages. So the first problem is that how do you sort of bring them all together at a middle point and then probably come up with these solutions? So I think that is one of the most interesting things, at least for me, while working at the center, has been that when you talk to people from different disciplines, it's very interesting as to how they are approaching that problem, right? And how you are approaching, and then sort of when you come together and then probably think about the problem statement and solutions, it's really great. So yeah, I think if Krishnan, did I miss anything? Add something?
Right. No, so I did want to link back to one of the earlier points that you asked, Karam, which was the social justice angle, right? And so now at CeRAI, we have researchers from the humanities background, from a technology background coming in. Now, in this report also, there is one idea that we have presented, which I think is a beautiful work coming out of this interdisciplinarity. Okay, so we have proposed one idea called the design or the dark patterns for gig work. Okay, now what is this? Now this is an example where, based on that social justice angle, there are many kinds of potential unjust or injustice that we have identified. So for instance, algorithmic opacity. Many of the gig workers don't understand how decisions are made by the platform, leading to uncertainty. Now, this is a form of what Johan Galtung calls structural violence. Okay, so we have used that to identify this. So sometimes one of the aspects of this opacity is the hidden costs or offloading of risks, right? Like many workers may sign up, but they don't realize that a lot of the costs they have to bear, like the cost of fuel. So when they get a particular price, the actual amount they get is minus the cost they incur. But that is not often explained. Okay. So what we have done is through the social justice angle, we identified multiple potential harms that could happen. And then we are marrying it with, so just leaving it at that is not sufficient. That's why we have now suggested there is an opportunity to create a design or a dark patterns repository, okay? And where you can translate it. A dark pattern is where you can translate this to some UI UX implication on the app. So for example, let's say, like I talked about this opacity in terms of price or incentives. Imagine you had a what if calculator that is available in the app. So the worker can now do some real-time simulation saying, oh, I have 3 more orders. If I get that, what will I, if so they can do something live there, right? So these are all recommended. So, and what we are saying is it's possible for today, from a research perspective, to create such a repository, even if it is not mandated by law. At least it can act as a self, where the industry looks at it on an annual basis and looks at how many of these dark patterns or design patterns they are addressing, and what can they do to address, share best practices, which then addresses the social justice aspect. So that interdisciplinarity, I think, is coming out in such in grounded recommendations like this. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for elaborating on that. And I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. But before I let you go, just any final thoughts from either of you on AI and the future of work, or AI and the gig economy? Anything else you'd like to share?
Just one thing, and of course, we've discussed several of the recommendations. I would urge people to go back to a report and read. So these all the recommendations are laid out in detail in terms of how you want to implement them, etc. But lastly, just like on the gig work aspect, right? Broadly, one of the things that we are trying to, like, key message is trying to tell is that it should be a participatory approach. Right? Whenever you're thinking about addressing all of these issues, or even implementing the recommendations that we've given, or even addressing issues that may come up in the future, governments, industry, civil society, researchers, and workers, there should be a participatory approach when you think about these solutions. Because also you also don't want to then do things in silos and probably do something that may have an adverse impact on this whole sector, because we've come a long way, right? So there've been a lot of investments in the industry, and it is providing several livelihood opportunities. And of course, as you said, the projections are that it has the capacity to absorb more of the workforce, right? So how do you sort of imagine a future where you're also providing livelihood opportunities at the same time ensuring worker welfare and ensuring their worker rights? I think the participatory approach is the one key message that people should keep in mind when they are going through the report and the recommendations we made.
Yeah, and I completely second that, and I just want to share that this is a nascent industry, and so a lot of support has to be given for this industry to work. I mean, it is doing a very important job of generating jobs for a wide number of people. At the same time, we have to be careful about the impact on humans. So that's why even in our recommendations, we have suggested a sort of a hybrid approach, a middle ground approach, if you will, with respect to policies and that govern versus facilitate. And I think we have to reframe this as instead of algorithm versus people, to reframe it as algorithms with people. That's the message.
I think that's beautifully put. I know that was in the report as well, but I think that's such a beautiful line, honestly. And I think that speaks to so much more than just gig work. And hopefully it's how we, at least as India, go about approaching AI going forward. I know every country has its own approach, but I hope that India, we realize the importance of that balance, and keep everyone's interest in mind as not only the gig work economy grows, but also our AI economy progresses. I want to thank you both again for taking the time out to be part of this episode. It's always nice to speak with you, Mr. Krishnan. And Omir, lovely having you on the podcast. Hopefully, we'll see you guys again very soon. Thank you again. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in. It's been fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.